What is up, bros and broettes? I'm Inkslasher, and welcome to another episode of Versus, the series where we take two weapons, or sometimes other things, put them head to head to see which one is better and to make you a better Call of Duty player. Today, we're looking at one of the brand new DLC weapons, the Volkssturmgewehr, up against its counterpart, just the regular STG44. Now, what a lot of people don't actually know is what STG stands for is Sturmgewehr, so almost just a shorter version of the Volkssturmgewehr. And truth be told, that in World War II, the STG was a hugely predominant weapon throughout the entire war, whereas the Volkssturmgewehr was like a later counterpart. It came out at the very end of World War II and kind of replaced it a little bit. So throughout this video, we are going to be comparing these two weapons, looking at all of their stats, and by the end of this video, you will know which one is better, and hopefully you're able to use that weapon and maybe improve your kill death a little bit. So as it turns out, between these two weapons, the name isn't the only thing that they have in common. In fact, the stats in-game are actually very similar. Starting off with the damage profile of these two weapons. Both weapons actually have the exact same damage profile, where you're going to deal 30 damage up close, 29 at mid-range, and 22 at long range. So with this damage profile, both weapons are going to be a 4 to a 5 bullet kill. The exact same for both weapons. Now, what gets even more interesting is when we look at the ranges for these weapons, because once again, it is exactly the same. Both weapons drop from a 4 to a 5 bullet kill at 51 meters in game. It's the exact same for both weapons. So since both of these weapons have the exact same damage profile and exact same range, it means that the fire rate is going to be that much more important. So for the STG44, the fire rate is 666 RPM, which for assault rifles in this game is actually pretty damn good. In fact, it's one of the best fire rates for assault rifles in the entire game. However, the Volkssturmgewehr really does come out on top. Its fire rate is 722 RPM, and that is definitely much better than the STG44. So for this, the Volk gets +1 point and takes the lead. So this is actually a bigger deal than you may think. Since the damage profile for both of these weapons is exactly the same, and the fact that the Volk always has a better fire rate, it means that the Volk is also always going to have a better time to kill by actually quite a substantial amount. So the STG44's time to kill is between 270 and 360 milliseconds, whereas the Volkssturmgewehr is going to be 253 milliseconds to 337 milliseconds. So in all cases, it is much better for the Volkssturmgewehr, and once again, it gets +1 point. So moving forward, another thing that's similar with these two weapons is the magazine size. Both weapons have the exact same magazine size of 30 rounds. However, where they differ is in the reload time. The reload time for the Volkssturmgewehr is 1.35 seconds, which is actually the second best reload time out of any of the assault rifles in World War II, whereas the reload time for the STG44 is 1.42 seconds. So once again, worse for the STG, therefore the Volk gets +1 more point and once again extends that lead. So at this point, things just really aren't looking great for the STG44. However, this is the point of the video where things start to turn around. And this starts with the hip spread. So the hip spread for the Volkssturmgewehr is actually one of its worst stats. The problem with it is it's the worst out of any of the assault rifles in Call of Duty World War II, whereas the STG44 just has a little bit smaller hip spread. It's not good hip spread, but it is better than the Volkssturmgewehr. So for that, the STG gets +1 point and finally puts some points on the board. The next thing we're going to look at for these two weapons is the aim down sights time. So the aim down sights time for the Volkssturmgewehr is 300 milliseconds, which for assault rifles in this game is actually pretty slow. Most of the assault rifles in this game range from about 250 milliseconds to 275 milliseconds. Speaking of which, that is where the STG is at. The STG's aim down sights time is 275 milliseconds, which is a little bit faster than the Volkssturmgewehr, and for that it gets +1 point. Now the next thing we have to look at is sprint out time, and what sprint out time is the amount of time it takes for your character to go from sprinting to shooting. So for the Volkssturmgewehr, it actually has the exact same sprint out time as aim down sights time at 300 milliseconds. However, the STG sprint out time is 250 milliseconds, which is 25 milliseconds faster than its aim down sights time. So this is much better than the Volkssturmgewehr, and the STG gets +1 more point and actually ties things up. Now, the other thing that we could look at here is the amount of recoil that these two weapons have, and what's actually surprising is from a numbers standpoint, the Volkssturmgewehr actually has more recoil than the STG44, which I think would surprise a lot of people because a lot of people say the Volkssturmgewehr is actually just a laser beam. And the reasoning for that is because the type of recoil that the Volkssturmgewehr has just goes straight up. It doesn't bounce side to side whatsoever. It literally just goes straight up in the air, which means it's super easy to control. Whereas the STG44 technically has less recoil, but the big difference is that the STG's recoil bounces side to side as well as up and down, meaning it's a little bit more difficult to control even though there's less recoil. So I'm not going to give out any points for recoil simply because it's basically personal preference. Whatever you prefer is going to be different from whatever your friend prefers. That's the problem with recoil. It's very hard to compare. So as far as stats go, that's it. That's all I have to look at. And looking at the score here, we have a tie. However, that is very wrong. Pretty much as wrong as it could be, because truth be told, the real winner here is the Volkssturmgewehr. Now let me explain why. So the stats that the Volk has that are better than the STG include a fire rate, a time to kill, and a reload time, whereas the stats that are better on the STG include hip spread, aim down sights time, and sprint out time. Which stats are more important? Obviously, the most important stat is time to kill, because that's going to decide which weapons are actually going to win in gunfights. And then, when you run out of bullets, what do you have to do? You have to reload. So these two things are both better for the Volkssturmgewehr, whereas the things that are better for the STG44, including hip spread, aim down sights time, and sprint out time, are better, but very minimally better. For example, the aim down sights time, it's better by 25 milliseconds for the STG, which is a small amount. It is better, and you are going to be able to aim down sights faster. However, it's not nearly as important as something like time to kill or fire rate. So basically, the way to look at this is the stats that are better for the Volkssturmgewehr are so much better than the stats that are better for the STG44. Now, don't get me wrong, the STG is still a very good weapon, but as it turns out, the Volkssturmgewehr is actually a beast, and I would go as far as saying it is definitely one of the best weapons in the game as of right now. And the reason why I say as of right now is I wouldn't be in the smallest bit surprised if they actually went ahead and nerfed this weapon a little bit, because like I said, it's definitely one of the best weapons in the game. So I gave you the stats, I gave you my opinion, and the winner this week is the Volkssturmgewehr. But now it's your turn. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Have you unlocked the Volkssturmgewehr? And if you have, do you think it's better than the STG? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Also, if you enjoyed the video, it'd be very greatly appreciated if you could hit that like button. Also, if you're new to the channel, it'd be fantastic if you could hit that subscribe button. It is the best way to stay up to date on all of my videos. But guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and until next time, peace out. Everything you're fighting for.